It is officially Ian Machado Garry fight week. This Saturday is UFC 310, and in the co-main event, we are getting Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Garry. And it wouldn't be an Ian Machado Garry fight week without a bunch of pathetic, insecure, weak men, incels of the MMA community hating on Ian Machado Garry by trotting out the same old, tired, regurgitated falsehoods over and over and over again in an attempt to slander Ian Machado Garry. And it really is driving me nuts because Ian Machado Garry is one of the most over-hated fighters on the UFC roster. And I feel like fan sentiment is starting to turn around. But I did a video yesterday breaking down a Garry interview with Ariel Helwani. And there were some people, the incels of the MMA community, still trotting out those same old tired lies over and over and over again. And some people believe this. And what you have is you have a portion of the community, a bunch of bad faith actors, putting out these narratives to hate on a certain fighter, in this case, Ian Machado Garry. And then you have people who aren't bothered to do the research or find the truth, now thinking that that is reality. So we're going to break it all down this video. We're going to look at an interview that barely got seen from earlier this year with Ian Machado Garry, where he's directly asked about his last name. He's directly asked about his wife's ex-husband. We're going to break down the whole Jeff Neal controversy and the Neil Magny controversy because I know people are going to jump down in the comments. But it is driving me nuts, the level of hate that he's getting. And not only the hate that he's getting, but the falsehoods that are being used to hate on him. When meanwhile, he single-handedly saved UFC 310. He was the only welterweight willing to step in on short notice and fight Shavkat Rakhmonov. On top of that, anybody, anywhere, anytime, he's not hiding on his ranking. He fought one of the most dangerous guys out of the top 10 in MVP because he couldn't find an opponent last time. Then this time, he was willing to fight Joaquin Buckley, who was behind him as well, super dangerous as well, all because Colby Covington ran for his life and ducked him and was shitting his britches like they were going out of style. Gary's willing to take on all comers. He's willing to fight the boogeyman of the division, and fans are still giving him grief over nothing and regurgitating bullshit talking points. So we're going to break it all down in this video. But there is sentiment changing. Fan sentiment is changing towards Ian Machado Garry. And I want to start off by showing this clip, because Gary's been posting a lot of content recently on his YouTube channel as well as his Instagram, just with his young son. And I think it's great content. I think it's content that if a lot of people saw, maybe they would rethink basically trashing a fighter and their entire family for no reason. So I want to show this clip that was from Ian Machado Garry's YouTube vlog for his fight camp, him and his son. Let's go.
Come on, dude. Let's go right now. Let's go.
So there you go. And there's a bunch more content like that. He's incorporating his young son, which is going to be a narrative, that we talk about a lot in this video about Ian Machado Garry's family, because a lot of fans, majority of the incel, pathetic, weak men of the MMA community continue to bring in his family and his wife and his kids into the whole entire discussion just because they don't like him as a fighter, mainly predicated on falsehoods that you shouldn't even care about anyway. But we're going to get into that in a second. But I think this is great content and a great way for Garry to try to grow on a lot of people. And that's why I wanted to make this video. I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off about this video. I know there's going to be a lot of incels who never talked to a woman in their entire life. But I'm turning off this video. I hate Garry. Look what he did to Jeff Neal. Look what he did to Neil Magny. His wife's a gold digger. But we're going to refute basically all those claims in this video. I want to start off with this. And I can't believe I'm even talking about this, but it has to be talked about because it was one of the main narratives. Essentially, Ian Machado Garry's wife wrote a book years before she even met him called How to Be a Wag. It was a satire book, and it was basically talking about women dating rich athletes. And people turned this into essentially she's a gold digger. Well, Garry, at the time she married him, was not like crazy rich. The UFC doesn't even pay that crazy well. And Gary's not even a massive star yet. He's growing his star power. I think he's a big win away from being a decent draw in the UFC, but he's not there quite yet. So it really doesn't make sense that they're hating on her, saying she's a gold digger because she's older than Garry and married Garry long before he was even in the UFC, but somehow she's a gold digger, even though the UFC doesn't pay well, especially on your first contract. So it makes absolutely no sense, all because she wrote a satire book that was an audio-only book. And when this was all going down, she put out this short video. There's another narrative that we're going to get to later that actually Ian Machado Garry addresses directly in an interview. But there's a narrative that people say, well, her ex-husband lives with them. So I just want to show you this clip where she says, look, that's just blatantly false. Listen to this.
And saying that my ex-husband lives with us. No, he doesn't. And no, he never has. You're just making that up, inventing it completely.
So there you go. Everyone just made that up. By the way, that's facts. Everyone made that up. There's no evidence to ever support that he lives with them. Garry addresses it in an interview clip that we're going to look at here in a second. But a lot of fans just run with that narrative as if it's true for some reason, even though there's no evidence to back that up. But we'll get to that in a little bit. One of the other narratives that people use to hate on Ian Machado Garry is this shirt right here. Oh my God, let me clutch my pearls. He wore a Jeff Neal mugshot t-shirt. Oh my God, how disrespectful. These guys get into a cage and give each other brain damage. And you're worried about a grown man wearing a shirt of a mugshot of a guy who went out drinking and driving? Let me get this straight. The MMA community is crying because Garry is poking fun at a guy he's going to step in the cage with and attempt to give brain damage, all because he's making fun of him for drinking and driving. By the way, if you drink and drive, you are a scumbag. Whether you're John Jones, whether you're Israel Adesanya, whether you're Jeff Neal. I have no qualms about someone making fun of somebody for going out and drinking and driving. Maybe we should make more fun of him because maybe it'll be a deterrent. Now, maybe he's changed his life and he's not doing that anymore, and maybe it was just a mistake. Fair enough. But to act like this is some big deal, oh my God, can you believe it? Garry wore a mugshot. It's just fake outrage. These people acting like they're so morally superior. Oh my God, Garry wore a shirt. And there was a video where his wife Layla was involved with making the shirt. So they were like, she deserves to be attacked by the fan base, and Sean Strickland calling her a sexual predator, and everyone attacking her because she was involved in making a t-shirt with her husband in a video. Oh my God. By the way, if you're more worried about a grown man wearing a t-shirt, if you're more angry about a grown man wearing a t-shirt with a mugshot than you are about that grown man on the t-shirt drinking and driving, then you have a big problem. You're a weirdo. Your moral compass is totally fucked up, okay? Because you should be more mad about Jeff Neal drinking and driving than Garry making fun of him for drinking and driving. I understand it was a mistake. I understand it was years ago. But at the end of the day, you go out and drinking and driving, I don't care if you're made fun of it for the rest of your life, okay? Don't care. You can kill people that way. I know people that got killed by drunk drivers. And somehow, oh, Gary's a piece of shit. How dare he wear a t-shirt with a mugshot on? Oh, boo-hoo, wah, wah, wah. We're going to get to the Neil Magny stuff in a second because I know there's going to be people jumping down my throat. Well, what about Neil Magny? But there's other stuff I want to get to first. Next thing I want to get to, okay? I did a video yesterday about Ian Machado Garry's interview with Ariel Helwani where he basically called out the entire welterweight division. He talked about how he didn't think twice about jumping in and fighting Shavkat Rakhmonov. How he originally wanted to be the backup for the fight. And the interview that we're going to take a look at in a second is from earlier this year with a guy named Shaq MMA. And I will link that interview down in the description. But he recently dropped an interview with Ian Machado Garry. It's not super pertinent to this video in particular, but I want to highlight it and shout it out in this video so that people can go check out the more recent interview. This was just dropped a couple hours ago. So I want to play you a clip from this interview. And it just goes to show why Ian Machado Garry should be one of your favorite fighters. He's willing to take on all comers, anybody, anywhere, anytime. He's asked about, like, what were you thinking about the risk of stepping in and fighting Shavkat on short notice? And this was his answer. Listen to this.
For taking a short notice fight against Shavkat Rakhmonov is I get beaten or I'm the number one contender fighting for the welterweight world title next. So both of the risks are the same. I'm fighting one of the best fighters in the division, regardless of who the name is. But the stakes for me are bigger. The reward for the Shavkat fight is bigger. The excitement for the Shavkat fight is bigger. So it's a clear no-brainer. Go take on what people say is the boogeyman. Go out there, find a way to beat him, cement yourself as the number one contender in the world, and then go take that belt from Bilal Muhammad and do what you said you were going to do from the second you started this, that you were going to be a world champion in the UFC. And that's it.
How can you not applaud that? There's guys out there, a.k.a. Colby Covington, who fake call out fighters all the time when they already have fights booked. I covered this in the video from yesterday. I highly encourage you to go check it out. I'll link it down in the description as well as the end cards. But there's guys doing that. And then there's guys like Garry, who you might not like the way he talks certain times and the way he trashes or tries to trash talk certain fighters. But this dude is game. He called Shavkat out after his last fight, said, I want to take Shavkat's L. Meanwhile, Kamaru Usman wants nothing to do with Shavkat. Colby Covington doesn't want anything to do with Garry. Shit his britches like they were going out of style. He ran for his life. He put out fake videos basically ducking Garry, and the fans ate it up. And then they realized they were sold wolf tickets by Colby. So you have to respect this. But this is a more recent interview from Shaq MMA. Shout out to him. Go check it out. I'll link it down in the description. But that's not the main interview I want to look at. The interview I want to look at, I actually featured this on my channel about 9 months ago. But I since more than doubled my subscribers since then, so I want to feature it again. But also, some of these same narratives are being spewed by the incel portion of the MMA community. And not only that, a lot of those guys are bad faith actors, but then you have the people who don't bother researching it and then are regurgitating those same talking points. So one of the main talking points is that Ian Machado Garry, where did the Machado come from? Oh, he must have took his ex-wife's or his wife's ex-husband's last name. That could not be further from the truth. And the real explanation for why Garry added Machado to his name, which I can't figure out why a bunch of grown men are worried about another grown man's last name to begin with, but the real reason why he did it is actually admirable, and he breaks it down in this interview. I will link this interview down in the description as well. Check this out. Listen to this.
Business of sharing information. Machado is your wife's maiden name, her father's name, last name.
Her mother's name.
Her mother's last name.
Her mother's name.
So it is Layla's mother's name. It is Layla's maiden name that Garry added to his name. He explains it more in depth here in a second. Because why did he do it? You know, because there's a bunch of grown men online who watch MMA who were worried about another man's last name. Why did he do it? Let's hear it. Let's hear it from the horse's mouth. Why did he do it?
It's her mother's name. And in Brazil, when Brazilians get married, they usually take the mother and the father's name. So it's a Brazilian thing. It's a South American thing where they take the same, like they don't want to lose connections to their family.
Perfect.
So they take both names. So there's where you go.
Love it. Thank you. See, that's why we're doing it together.
Yeah.
So he explained it, why he added the name, or where the name came from. He didn't explain why yet. And now he explains why he took this last name, which I think is admirable. I think it shows what a good parent he is.
Two, part of your decision to take on your wife, Machado, in your name is so that your son and your stepson could have a joint last name.
Truth is, it's kind of the only reason. Obviously, having the link to Brazil is amazing, and the Brazilian side of my wife's family, which is the amount of Brazilian family she has, is unbelievable. And to be able to call them family, I'm very happy, very proud, very grateful. But the truth is, I only did it because I wanted my son and my stepson to really feel connected.
So if you guys don't know, his wife has a young child from a previous marriage. That child has her maiden name. She then married Garry and took Garry's last name. So now they have a child together. She's changed her name. So now none of them have a name in common with Garry's young stepson. So they decided, you know what, let's just add Machado to everyone's name. So that way this son feels connected to the family and isn't alienated and has the same last name as his brother. And he explains it more here. I mean, this is admirable.
I didn't want them going through life with two separate surnames. I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect. And if you guys want to be brothers, I want to make sure that you guys have that same connection. That was the main reason for me.
And
how can you not applaud that? He is looking out for his young stepson. He doesn't want him to feel alienated and not part of the family, because now all of a sudden nobody has the same name as him. So they said, oh, well, let's just add Machado to everyone's name. And somehow this loving thing that Garry did for his stepchild, to have a good relationship with his stepchild and to ensure the brothers, the young brothers, had the same last name, somehow that is used against him. People are like, he took the wife's ex-husband's last name. That must mean he's a cuck. That must mean he's a cuck, which is the dumbest narrative, by the way. A lot of these people who say that, oh, Gary's a cuck. Gary's a cuck. He would take their woman, okay? He would take their woman. They're just an embarrassment. They're mad that Gary's an elite level athlete who has a hot wife and has a nice family, and he treats his family well, and he loves his wife, and he talks highly of his wife. So that means he's a pussy. That's essentially what they try to say, which couldn't be further from the truth. But the next clip we're going to take a look at is where he's asked about the nutritionist, because the other narrative, which we talked about earlier today, was, oh, the ex-husband lives with them and he's his nutritionist, which is actually true. He is his nutritionist, but let's hear why he is Ian Machado Garry's nutritionist. Let's hear that, because believe it or not, that's admirable as well. Listen to this.
In that same regard, he is a professional in one regard. He's also the father of my wife's son. Mm-hmm. And I never want to be a wedge between a father and a son. I never want that in my conscience. Yeah.
There's more. There's more. Oh my God. Garry wants his young stepson to have a good relationship with his biological father. He wants his wife to have a good co-parenting relationship with her other son's father. Oh, sounds perfect to me. But why is he his nutritionist? Why? Right? He doesn't want to be a wedge. So why is that? Because he wants to travel with him. Listen to this.
So I know that we're going on this adventure to travel the world. Hey, dude, want to travel the world? Be my nutritionist, and we can all do this together. We can. You can come and see your son whenever you want. You guys can be there. The two of them are going to Disney this morning.
That's sick.
Do you know what I mean? And that's the energy I have. I want to be a good human. I want to be a good man. And I never want to be a wedge between a father and a son, because I know if someone was to be a wedge between me and my son, I'd be livid.
Mm-hmm. Think about that. The ex-husband is an elite nutritionist that Garry pays when he's traveling the world on training camps. They don't live together. They don't stay together. But because Garry wants his stepson to be with them. And therefore, if his stepson is with them, with his mother, he doesn't want the dad to have to be away from his son. So he's like, oh, well, why don't you be my nutritionist? Because we're good at co-parenting together anyway. You know, for some reason, the incel portion of the MMA community who have never had a relationship with a woman don't understand that you can be secure in yourself and say, oh, well, they had a relationship years ago. They're divorced now. They had a son together. Oh my God, they fucked 15 years ago. Oh my God, what am I ever going to do? They could still be good co-parents. And he doesn't want to take a son away from his father, and he wants his stepson to be there with his mother. He doesn't want to split up a family. So why not bring him along? Okay, he doesn't have to live there. He doesn't live with them, but he travels with them and is Ian Machado Garry's nutritionist. Also, he can travel the world and be with his son, his biological son, aka Ian Machado Garry's stepson. I don't understand how people aren't applauding this. This is a more than perfect answer, and you shouldn't care anyway. But somehow this makes him a cuck. Makes no sense. And what's so funny is it makes him a cuck, right? Could you imagine if Garry, I know this doesn't really make sense in the grand scheme of things, but can you imagine if Garry was the ex-husband and he was preparing meals for the new husband and traveling with him? He'd be, you know, in the MMA community, if he was still a fighter, I know that doesn't make any sense, but just hear me out. The fans would still say he was a cuck. Oh, you're flying around with your ex-wife's new husband and you're cooking him meals? You must be a cuck. So there's no way he would win here. There's no way he would win here, but he doesn't want to split up a relationship between a father and a son, which is super admirable. And he goes on a little bit more here. Listen.
I'd be livid and I'd hate that person. And I never want that on my conscience. So the truth is, my wife does not have a boyfriend. My wife has an ex-husband who has, and they have a past. I understand that. I'm aware of that. Everyone has a fucking past in their life. Everyone does. I don't want to be a wedge between my wife and her ex-husband and her kid and have them go through battles and arguments because I don't want them around. No, I'm a bigger man than that. I understand that there's a child in all of this and he deserves to be prioritized.
I don't understand you can't respect it. There is a child involved, a young child who deserves to be prioritized, who deserves to see both of his parents. Like, I don't understand the portion of the MMA community that essentially is criticizing Garry on the surface for having some type of interacting co-parenting relationship with his wife's ex-husband because Garry loves his stepchild and loves his wife, who obviously loves her child from a previous marriage. Like, what do they want Garry to do? Like, is it supposed to be like Peter Griffin and the Chicken? Every time Garry sees her ex-husband, he's supposed to whoop his ass? Because we know he could, because he's an elite level, top level welterweight. I mean, like, what do you want out of him? Do you want to give him the finger every time he sees him? I just don't get it. Like, what do you want from him? Oh, we're never going to see your ex-husband again, even though you have a young child with him. So you're going to punish the child just because a previous relationship didn't work out. but yet you can still have a friendly relationship and co-parent your young child and try to give that young child the best life possible. I really don't get it at all. The hate on this topic is just so dumb, so stupid, so illogical. And for some reason, people keep regurgitating the narrative. Oh, they live together just because he travels with him for certain training camps and certain fights to be his nutritionist. So that way Garry can bring along the young stepchild as well. It's that simple. It's that simple. The last clip we're going to look at from this interview, and then we're really going to get into the Neil Magny stuff because I know a lot of people are going to comment that. He's asked about the Neil Magny comments here because he got a lot of flack for pointing out what Neil Magny said at a press conference, which said, essentially, I'm going to give Garry an ass whooping. Now that I'm a father, I've become accustomed to giving those ass whoopings. And a lot of people are like, how dare he accuse Magny of being a child abuser? By the way, this is the perfect answer from Ian Machado Garry. Listen to this.
And to fucking Neil Magny. Neil Magny. People are going nuts that I brought his family into saying he beats his kid. Did I say that? Or did Neil say that? And I was livid because I was sat with my little boy when I was listening to the interview and went, nobody called him up on that? No one at the press conference went, hey, dude, did you just say you beat your kid? Whether he meant it for serious or meant it as a joke, the words that came out of his mouth, the only person that Neil Magny can be annoyed about is himself. I just pulled him out on his own words.
Facts. Garry never said, I heard a rumor that Neil Magny whoops his kids. That's not what he said. For some reason, people keep regurgitating that Garry painted him as a child abuser. No, he just said, why would you say such a thing? And oh, you don't believe me? Luckily, I have the clip pulled out. Because this doesn't fully encompass absolutely everything, but this is a good summary of basically what Garry said. So previously, I'm not even going to show you this clip, at another press conference, Neil Magny made a poor joke, essentially saying, I'm going to whoop Garry. I'm going to give him a whooping. I've become accustomed to dishing out these whoopings now that I'm a new father. Basically had a 2-year-old son and was implying that he's going to whoop him like his 2-year-old son. And this is what Garry had to say at a press conference.
Nobody, there is no fucking right to ever put your hand on a kid, ever discipline anything.
Imagine crying because Garry said that. Nobody should ever put their hands on a kid. Oh my God, he painted Magny as a child abuser. And then there's a little bit more of this.
You want to play victim so bad, bro.
Mate, you're a father. You never lay your fucking hands on a child ever.
You know exactly.
Yesterday you said,
for a fact I'll never have
yesterday you said I'm a father. I've been accustomed to that type of beating.
Yeah, dude.
And I'm going to whoop that ass on Saturday.
You can play
you'll
victim
do
all you
fucking
want.
nothing. You'll sit there, you'll shut up, and you'll do what you're told.
So there you go. That's the gist of it. Calls out Neil Magny for something he said at a presser. We have MMA fans crying because Garry called out Magny for saying something, making a dumb joke at a presser. And you have people, and even Neil Magny kind of implied it, but you have people regurgitating it, right? Ian Machado Garry trash talk was used in my custody battle, but no ill will towards him. This entire headline and people regurgitating this couldn't be more false. Could not be more false, even from Neil Magny himself. And you're probably thinking, Joey, how would you know? You weren't there for the custody battle. That's not how that works at all. You can't just say, no child services or judge is going to say, you know what, this random guy that has no personal relationship with you or your child, has no interaction with you or your child, simply said, you don't ever put your hands on a child. I didn't like the remark that you made. And like, oh yeah, he definitely beats his child, so we're taking his child away from him. Makes absolutely no sense. What, if anything, was brought up in his custody battle, it was what he said at the press conference. And again, that isn't enough to take his child away from him. It's just a poor taste joke. So people acting like somehow Garry tried to get Magny's kid taken away from him is just completely false. It makes absolutely no sense. And I know there's people that are going to be down in the comments, Joey, no, that's what he did. That's what he did. This and that. No, that's not what he did. He just said, hey man, you don't ever put your hands on a child. I didn't like the joke that you made. Oh, God forbid, Neil Magny said something at a press conference and his opponent brought it up. Oh no, let me clutch my pearls. And to act like anybody can just say anything, and then all of a sudden you're going to get your child taken away, makes no sense. So essentially anybody online can name any fighter and say, oh, hey, Chris Weidman, you don't ever put your hands on your kids. Oh, now he's going to get his kids taken away. No, it doesn't make any sense. Now, if Garry was out, let me phrase it this way. If Garry was out there saying, look, I heard through the grapevine, a little birdie told me, I heard from the rumor mill that Neil Magny's out there pushing his 2-year-old son against the fence, dirty boxing him to 29-28 decisions. And that's what I heard. I would 100% be in favor of the criticism of Garry. That's not what he did. And people are grossly misrepresenting it as if this is how the system works. Garry called him out for trash talk, and then now his kid's going to get taken away. By the way, who makes a joke about beating their 2-year-old son if they're in a custody battle? So Neil Magny might be dumb as a box of rocks. You know, he just probably slipped up, whatever. But who's making that type of joke when you're going through a custody battle? But yeah, that's grossly misrepresented. The last name thing is grossly misrepresented. The wife's ex-husband, the cuck narrative is completely misrepresented. And it's all based on a bunch of incels in the MMA community that don't like that Garry loves his wife and loves his family. And basically because he's with a woman who's older than him, even though she's attractive, he's some type of beta. And because he has a good relationship with her ex-husband, he's some type of beta, when in reality, they don't get any women at all. And they just regurgitate these false narratives as a way to hate on Garry. By the way, one narrative that if you want to hate on Garry, if you want to say he rubs you the wrong way, and to go back to that press conference clip, if you want to say he copies Conor McGregor too much, he's a wannabe Conor McGregor and it rubs me the wrong way, perfectly fine. Perfectly acceptable if you want to say that. But stop regurgitating these blatantly false narratives to hate on a guy who's willing to step in on 3 weeks' notice and fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, to a guy who's trying to do what's best for his family and making up narratives about his name. Who even gives a rat's ass about his name? I'm disgusted that I even had to break it down in this video. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. I know there's going to be a bunch of incels crying. Wah, Joey, how could you say this? Just go ahead and unsubscribe. I don't care. I don't care. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching.